Hello, and thanks for stopping by. As we've seen before on this channel, London has provided the backdrop for countless music videos. On a similar note, the city streets and buildings have also graced many album covers, from the misty slopes of Primrose Hill, to grubby tube stations, world famous landmarks, suburban streets, and more. In this video, I'd like to take you on a tour of some of those locations, album and the occasional single covers which were snapped right here in London, specifically between the 1960s and 1990s. As always, this list is far from exhaustive, so if you can think of any other examples, please do let me know in the comments below. I've also put an online map together, pinpointing all of the locations we'll be seeing. I'll leave a link to that in the description. We'll begin with the Beatles, who of course famously hailed from Liverpool, though much of their career was spent in London. Their debut album, Please Please Me, was released in March 1963 by EMI, who'd signed the Fab Four after they were turned down by a number of other record labels. The most famous of these rejections came from Decca. After the Beatles auditioned at their studios, then located at 165 Broadhurst Gardens, now known as Lillian Baylis House, near West Hampstead Station in January 1962, it's claimed they were dismissed with the words, "Guitar groups are on the way out." The photo adorning the cover of Please Please Me, showing John, Paul, George and Ringo peering over a balcony, was taken inside what were then EMI's headquarters at 20 Manchester Square, just across from the southern end of Baker Street, a building that's since been replaced with this new office block. Many other acts were photographed at the EMI building, including the Supremes, the Beach Boys, and the Sex Pistols, who parodied the famous Beatles shot. This rather cool photo of David Bowie, or Davy Jones as he was known then, given this date from 1965, was also snapped on Manchester Square. The EMI balcony image was later used on the Beatles' Red album, a collection of their hits spanning 1962 to 1966, along with an updated version showing the group a little older and sporting longer hair, which appeared on the accompanying Blue album, covering their 1967 to 1970 period. The colourful collage illustrating 1967's Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, meanwhile, which was composed by the pop artists Peter Blake and Jan Hanwer, was photographed by Michael Cooper inside this building, the former Chelsea Manor Studios, located at 1 to 11 Flood Street. Whilst this photo, featured on the 1966 EP Nowhere Man, was taken within the grounds of Chiswick House, the same location where the videos for Paperback Writer and Rain were also shot. The Beatles' most memorable album cover, and one of the most recognised in music history, is 1969's Abbey Road, which was taken in St John's Wood, on the Abbey Road zebra crossing, located outside the famous recording studio. This iconic image was taken by Ian McMillan, who was perched in the middle of the road on a stepladder on the morning of the 8th of August 1969. In a striking historical contrast, it's interesting to note that one of the darkest moments of the late 1960s, the Charles Manson murders, occurred in Los Angeles just hours after the Abbey Road image was taken. Thanks to historian and friend of the channel, Sean Munger, for pointing that one out. Once the Beatles split up, each member went on to pursue their own music careers. For Paul McCartney, this involved establishing the band Wings alongside his wife Linda. The cover photo for their debut album, Wildlife, from 1971, was taken within the grounds of Osterley Park, a grand Georgian estate in Isleworth, not too far from Heathrow Airport. On the 28th of October 1973, Wings returned to Osterley Park to photograph the cover for their best known LP, Band on the Run, which features a group of famous people, including Michael Parkinson, Christopher Lee, and the boxer John Conte posing as escaped convicts caught in a searchlight. The photo was taken in front of this wall, which forms part of Osterley Park's stable yard. Although, as you can see, when I travelled here to film the site, the view was blocked by a parked car. Luckily, using a little trickery, we can remove it. Wing's 1978 album, London Town, meanwhile, is illustrated with a shot of Tower Bridge, taken from this spot. The London Town image is similar to the illustrated cover of Handsome, an album released a few years earlier, in 1975, by Kilburn and the High Roads. Kilburn and the High Roads were established by Ian Dury, who later went on to form Ian Dury and the Blockheads. The Blockheads' first album, 1977's New Boots and Panties, which included hits such as Billy Ricky Dicky and My Old Man, an ode to Ian's father who worked as a London bus driver, had this picture on the cover, taken at 306 Vauxhall Bridge Road, just around the corner from Victoria Station, which in those days was home to the now lost Axford clothing shop. The young lad wearing flares, by the way, is Ian Dury's son, Baxter, who's since gone on to become a successful musician in his own right. And the photo shoot outside the old Axford store is depicted in the 2010 biopic Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. Returning to the 1960s, we have The Who, formerly known as The High Numbers, who played some of their earliest gigs at the Railway Hotel, a venue which once stood beside Harrow and Wealdstone Station. It was here, in 1964, that Pete Townshend smashed his first guitar, initially by accident, after cracking it on the stage's low ceiling. You can see the side entrance of the former Railway Hotel on the sleeve of The Who's 1971 compilation album, Meaty, Big and Bouncy. Sadly, the large pub was destroyed by a fire in 2002, and the site's now covered by flats, a pair of blocks named after two of The Who's members, Daltrey House and Moon House. The Who's first album, meanwhile, was My Generation, released in 1965. In the US, this was retitled The Who Sings My Generation, and was illustrated with this alternative shot of the band standing in front of Big Ben, or the Elizabeth Tower as it's officially known, which would have been taken near here, on the steps between Westminster Bridge and Queen Boudica statue. Another famous London landmark is of course Buckingham Palace. It was outside here, in 1979, that reggae legend Peter Tosh posed for this photo on a unicycle taken for his single Buckingham Palace, a track featured on his Mystic Man LP. Going back to the 60s again, another major group to emerge from that era were the Rolling Stones, a band whose early career I've looked at in my previous video on Ilpie Island, which I'll link below in case you haven't yet seen it. In 1967, the Rolling Stones released Between the Buttons, featuring hits such as Ruby Tuesday and Let's Spend the Night Together. The dreamlike cover for this album was photographed here, beside this path on Primrose Hill, at 5:30 AM one cold 60s morning by Gerard Mankiewicz, who later stated he wanted to capture the ethereal, druggy feel of the time. To achieve this, he simply rubbed Vaseline on the camera lens. Sticking with North London, the Muswell Hillbillies, recorded by the Kinks in 1971, features the interior of the Archway Tavern, which sits between Holloway Road and Highgate Hill. Other images included on the Muswell Hillbillies sleeve depict this spot on Highgate Southwood Lane and the corner of Redcar Place and Dartmouth Park Hill, which, as you can see, has changed beyond all recognition, having been swallowed up by the Whittington estate. Another album from 1971 is Anticipation by the American artist Carly Simon. The cover picture for this record was taken at the gates of Queen Mary's Garden, located in the middle of Regent's Park, by Carly's brother Peter, who was a professional photographer. Along with Abbey Road, which we saw earlier, one of music's most iconic album covers has to be David Bowie's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, which came out in 1972. The record itself was cut at Trident Studios on St Anne's Court in Soho, whilst the album's cover artwork was taken not too far away on Heddon Street, a U-shaped lane tucked away off of Regent Street. The exact location on Heddon Street was outside number 23, which back then was occupied by a furriers called K West, who weren't too happy when they found out about the shoot, stating through a solicitor that they dealt with, quote, a clientele generally far removed from the pop music world, and therefore had no wish to be associated with Mr. Bowie or the record. The photos of Bowie posing as Ziggy Stardust were taken by Brian Ward on the cold, damp evening of the 13th of January 1972. Brian's studio was close by, and due to the inclement weather, the pair had decided not to venture too far. As you can see, Heddon Street is all spruced up now, although thanks to its connection with Bowie, it's still something of a shrine for fans, and the site celebrated by this plaque. You can also see this red telephone box, similar to the one featured on the back of the album sleeve, which stands in front of a mural inspired by Bowie's famous lightning bolt motif. There's even the Starman Bar, and a restaurant called Ziggy Green, outside of which is a replica of the old K West sign. This isn't the only David Bowie record to feature a London location. His 1986 single, Absolute Beginners, is illustrated with a midnight shot of the Queen's Walk on South Bank, near the present-day London Eye, an area which also appears in the song's accompanying video. A little further down the Thames is Battersea Power Station. There was a time when one of the best views of this mighty building could be obtained from here, on Nine Elms Lane, although it's now blocked by a cluster of apartments. It was from this approximate location in 1977 that the picture for Pink Floyd's concept album Animals was taken. Creating this image proved rather problematic. Initially, a giant inflatable pig was hoisted above Battersea Power Station for the photo shoot. However, the porcine balloon broke free from its moorings and drifted off towards Heathrow, which no doubt caused quite a headache for air traffic control. In the end, it was decided it was easier to simply superimpose an image of the pig balloon onto the main photo. In 1978, The Jam filmed a video for their record, News of the World, on top of Battersea Power Station, although the picture used to illustrate the single was taken on Carnaby Street, back when that fashionable location was paved with garish rubber tiles. The Jam's earlier album, 1977's This Is the Modern World, features an image taken beneath the huge, elevated Westway roundabout, which sits between White City and Notting Hill. It's tricky to tell now, but I'd say the exact location for that photo is here, close to Walmer Road. Since then though, a large leisure centre has been built in the middle of the roundabout, completely obscuring the view of the two tower blocks, Markland and Frinstead House. On a darker note, the Jam's 1978 single, Down in the Tube Station at Midnight, which tells the disturbing tale of a drunken, late-night gang assault, features this photograph, taken on the westbound Central Line platform at Bond Street. As for the Jam's 1983 Greatest Hits collection, Snap, well, the photo for that was taken here, outside the Dickens Inn on St Catherine's Dock. Another Greatest Hits record, which also happens to be the highest-selling reggae album of all time, is Legend by Bob Marley and the Wailers, which was released a few years after Bob Marley passed away in 1981, aged just 36. The iconic image of Bob, which adorns the cover of Legend, dates from 1978. It was taken at the Keskady Arts Centre, a venue now sadly lost, which was located on Gifford Street, between King's Cross and Caledonian Road. It was also during his visit here that the video for Is This Love was filmed. Pretty much parallel to Gifford Street, on the opposite side of London, is Milton Avenue, a residential road near Harlesden Station. It was here that Carroll Thompson, known as the Queen of Lovers Rock, had her picture taken for the cover of her 1981 album, Hopelessly in Love. Milton Avenue certainly looked a lot less cluttered back then, didn't it? This next album, Black London Blues, from 1969, also features a residential street, although this one no longer exists. The artist shown here is the musician and actor Ram John Holder, who later went on to play the character Pork Pie in the 90s Channel 4 sitcom Desmond's. And the road upon which he's standing is the former Testerton Street, which once ran through Notting Hill. Testerton Street was demolished not long after this picture was taken, and the site is now occupied by the Lancaster West estate, part of which included the Grenfell Tower, the block of flats tragically engulfed by fire during the early hours of the 14th of June 2017, claiming 72 lives. The remains of the Grenfell Tower stand near what would have been the northeastern end of Testerton Street. You can also see this long-lost road in the 1970 film Leo the Last, which also happened to feature Ram John Holder. He played a preacher in it. Another example of demolition, this time in London's Financial Square Mile, can be seen on the cover of the 1995 album All Change by the Liverpool band Cast. This picture was taken in front of the Royal Exchange, beside one of the entrances to Bank Tube Station. If you look towards the background, you'll see a large building site. This was once the site of the Mappin and Webb building, which stood on the corner of Poultry and Queen Victoria Street. In the 1990s, when this image was taken, that building had been knocked down, and construction of its controversial replacement, the postmodern No. 1 Poultry, was underway. In 1976, The Clash, formed by Joe Strummer and Mick Jones, released their debut album, simply entitled The Clash. The famous image for that LP was taken in Camden Town, on this staircase in Stables Market. This wasn't a staircase originally, it was a ramp, similar to this one, also located in Stables Market. These ramps date back to the 19th century, and were built for the many horses who worked at Camden Goods Station, as a means of enabling them to trot to and from the stable block's upper story. In 1980, The Clash had another photo shoot, this time on Camley Street, the photo being used for the cover of their Sandinista album. This picture was taken beneath the railway line into St Pancras, which was a pretty rundown area in those days. Since then, the site has been heavily redeveloped to accommodate the Eurostar International Terminal. Also in 1980, and back up near Stables Market, Madness had this photo taken outside Chalk Farm Tube Station for the cover of Absolutely, an album whose opening track is Baggy Trousers, the video for which was filmed at Kentish Town Church of England Primary School on Islip Street, just over half a mile from here. Another Madness record featuring a London station, in this case Marylebone, can be seen on the front and back of their 1986 single Waiting for the Ghost Train. The 1980s were very much the era of the wheeler dealer, as epitomised by Minder's Arthur Daly and Del Boy from Only Fools and Horses, the look of who seems to have inspired David Victor Emmanuel, aka Smiley Culture, to dress up as a dodgy second-hand car dealer for the cover of his 1984 single Cockney Translation. This picture was taken on Plough Road, just outside Clapham Junction Station. In 1994, Blur released their album Parklife, the cover of which, and accompanying booklet, featured scenes shot at Walthamstow Stadium, the famous Greyhound track which closed in 2008. Today, the site is largely covered by, yep, you've guessed it, flats, although a number of features from the stadium do still remain in place. In the mid-1990s, Blur's supposed great rivals were Oasis, whose What's the Story Morning Glory LP, released in October 1995, is illustrated with this shot of Berwick Street in Soho, looking towards Kemp House, a tower block which dates from the early 1960s. Tucked away at the southern end of Berwick Street is Walker's Court, a remnant from the days when Soho was notoriously sleazy. An album which perfectly encapsulated the seediness of old Soho is Non-Stop Erotic Cabaret, which was released by Softcell in 1981. The rear of that album features this shot of Walker's Court. Like What's the Story Morning Glory, Different Class by the Sheffield-formed band Pulp was also released in October 1995. The creation of this album was spurred on by the huge success of their single Common People, which had been released earlier that year. The cover photo for the Common People single was taken outside Frank's Sandwich Bar on Addison Bridge Place, just across from Olympia Exhibition Centre. Thankfully, Frank's is still very much in business. The cover for the Different Class album, meanwhile, was taken just outside London, in the grounds of St Barnabas Church on Vine Street, East Moseley, close to Hampton Court Palace. The wedding scene here is real. It took place on Saturday the 12th of August 1995. The bride and groom, Sharon and Dominic, were friends with the photographer, David Milne, who offered to do their wedding shoot for free so long as he could take a few extra pictures of the guests mingling with cardboard cutouts of Pulp's band members. When released in the autumn of 1995, Different Class came with a booklet featuring a number of other images which were designed in a way to allow fans to pick their own cover. These alternatives included shots of a classic Routemaster bus, 2 shots taken in Regent's Park, and this one snapped outside St Paul's Cathedral. Which one would you have gone for? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tour of London's most iconic album cover locations, and as always, I'd love to hear your own thoughts. Out of the albums and bands discussed here, which is your favourite? And are there any other album covers featuring similar sites which you can think of? If so, please be sure to let me know in the comments. If you haven't yet subscribed to Robslondon, then I'd appreciate it very much if you could please consider doing so, as this, along with clicking the bell icon to receive notifications, will ensure that you don't miss out whenever I publish a new video. Plus, of course, it'd be wonderful to have you along. If you're feeling extra generous, you can also support my work with a tip via either my Ko-fi account, which I'll link below, or the YouTube thanks button, which appears as a heart icon beneath the video. Any such financial donations are of course greatly appreciated, and they really do help go towards creating content. Anyway, on that note, thanks again for watching friends. Stay well, and please be sure to stay tuned.